All right, everyone, we have a special guest on the phone. It is Chris Wragge. For the two people that don't know who you are, Chris, can you give a quick 2 seconds bio, epic story about yourself?
Well, it all began back in Hackensack, New Jersey, back in 1970. No, I won't bore you with the details. You can catch me every day from 4:30 in the morning until 8 in the morning, and then again at noon on CBS here in New York. So I've been a news anchor for a great number of years, been in the business for about 27 years now. Was a sportscaster, came to New York when I took over for Warner Wolf back in the early 2000s, spent some time at NBC Sports. So I've covered everything from the NFL to the NBA to the PGA Tour to the Olympics, you name it. And I've been I was raised in the shadow of Giant Stadium, so I consider myself a fan / semi-expert on this team since I've basically been going to games every Sunday since 1976. So let's launch into some Giant conversation. That's my background.
Sure. Over this time, have you developed any crazy Giants rituals or any game day situations or superstitions that you've developed?
Well, it's funny. Phil Simms was my boyhood idol. So I used to be a trainer at Quest Health Club on Route 17 up in Mahwah when I was in high school and then in college. So I played football in high school and then got a scholarship to play in college. And so back in the day, I used to spot Joe Morris when he would come in and, when he'd have 800 pounds on his back squatting, I'd be one of the people spotting him. And I used to work out in the summers with Phil Simms, and Dave Jennings taught me how to punt. So, I've had like this great kind of history and living in the same town as a lot of these guys, had a great chance to not only see them on Sundays, it was my ritual with my dad every Sunday. We'd go to the 8 Sundays a year, we'd go to Giant games, and literally the only games I missed were when I was away at college for that four-year period of time. But other than that, and when, having lived in different parts of the country, ever since I've been back here, I've been a season ticket holder. We've been season ticket holders ever since 1976. And my ritual since 2004, which was when I came back to New York, has always been a number 10 jersey on Sundays.
All right, so that leads me into my next question. If one game to win it, who are you taking, Eli or Phil?
You know what? I'm gonna take Eli.
I'm gonna take
Eli for a couple of reasons. And this is not to diminish what Phil did, because I was fortunate enough in that, again, as I mentioned, my ritual and my, part of the fabric of my upbringing with my dad was going to Giant games. So I've been to all 5 Super Bowls. I thank my dad for that. So I've seen Phil play. I've seen Hostetler play, obviously. That game in Pasadena was one of the most unbelievable experiences of my life to watch Phil and basically, just run up and down the field versus the Broncos back then. But those 2 passes that Eli, the catch with Tyree, that's one thing. I know that was a little bit more on the catch side than the throw, minus the escape. But I can't get the image of that throw to Manningham out of my head. I just, for some reason, it's one of the greatest passes I've ever seen in all my years of watching football. And so I think in that big moment against a team where the Giants didn't have, by most accounts, didn't have a chance in either game versus the Patriots going in, to see Eli do what he did under pressure against that team, with all of the chips somewhat stacked against him, I would take him in that big moment.
Would you consider that one of your favorite Giant moments, if not your favorite Giant moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, what the first one back in the after the 2007 season, the 2008 Super Bowl in in Arizona was by far the greatest. I mean, I look back, it's funny because they happened in different times of my life. I remember the playoff game versus the 49-3 win over the 49ers at Giant Stadium. The championship game versus the Redskins. I remember that like it was yesterday. Those are really vivid memories for me on the good side. Now, on the bad side, I was there for the Pisarcik game. I was there for the Flipper Anderson game. I saw Jason Sehorn's interception versus Philadelphia in that playoff game, which is one of those plays that, I still can't wrap my head around how he was able to do that. And then, in it being in Indianapolis for that second Super Bowl win, here in the Eli era, was incredible too. I mean, they all have had a real big impact on my Giant fandom, chronicles, and their memories that I'll have with me for a lifetime. But I would say the one in Arizona was a little bit more special to me because I had my two best friends and my dad with me for that. So that was kind of a last minute thing where CBS, the company I work for, were like, hey, you know what? We've got some tickets for you. Here you go. And I was able to call my dad, my two best friends, and say, meet me at the airport in 3 hours. We're going to Arizona. And we flew in the night before and we flew out right after the game. It was a kind of a little barnstorming trip, but it was one of the best memories of my life.
Listen, I'm not going to tell Phil that you took Eli over him, so you don't have to worry about that.
Hopefully he won't hear. He knows I love him. I still see him a lot. We live a town next to one another now, so I see him quite frequently. But again, he, as I mentioned, he's my boyhood idol, and I love Phil to death. So
do you think over the past, I would say, 6 to 7 years, do you think the recent play has hurt Eli's legacy?
I don't necessarily, but see, this is just it. I don't necessarily blame Eli for the misfortune of the Giants the last 5-6 seasons, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the quarterback is always the person that people on the outside are quick to blame. They just automatically assume it must be due to bad quarterback play. But I think what we've seen year in and year out, things that have not been addressed through whether you want to blame Jerry Reese or, the Mark Ross, you want to blame scouts. Oh, I don't know. You can point the finger at a number of different people, and I'm not saying that Eli's been perfect throughout this stretch, but the fact that they never addressed the offensive line, and even when they did address it, they addressed it with guys like Eric Flowers, who, you waste a top 10 pick on, and you see what a bust that was. And it's been tough to watch. I mean, I don't care who you are. If you're a quarterback and you're under constant assault, it's going to chip away at your ability to really perform out there. And I think that's, especially what we saw at the beginning of this season. I mean, go back to the Dallas game early in the season. I mean, that was ridiculous. Johnny Unitas, I don't care who you put back there, could not have played under those conditions. I've never seen more defenders attack a quarterback unabated than that game. It was literally like the Giants almost didn't have anyone playing the offensive line out there. It was like a game of 7-on-7. It was ridiculous. So, to answer your question kind of in long form here, I don't think it's hurt his legacy. You win 2 Super Bowls versus the Patriots playing for the New York Giants. You know what? It's going to take an awful lot to tarnish that legacy. And it's not like, hell, I know people blame Eli for a lot of things that went on this season. But, remember a couple of years ago, we all sat through a 27 interception season from Eli. And I don't think there was half the mock outrage that you had, after this season.
Good point. So would you consider Eli a Hall of Fame quarterback?
I do, yeah. For those reasons that I mentioned, to do what he did against that team under those circumstances, to win 2 Super Bowls against Tom Brady and the Patriots, I think that, and he's been blessed with the that rare ability of availability. I mean, he has been there every Sunday since the day he walked into Giant Stadium. And with the exception, obviously, of that that malfeasance from last year where they benched him for Geno Smith for a game. But, he's got the longevity is his friend. And he's been there, and he's, accrued the numbers, and he's won a couple of Super Bowls. And to me, he's done what he needs to do to be in the Hall.
So what was your thoughts on this team prior to the season start? How did you think they were going to fare?
I thought, realistically, I thought this was a 7 or 8 win team. I was not thinking, I wasn't thinking playoffs or anything coming off of what happened last year. I mean, I think what we saw last year, so, you get a new head coach, you get another offensive coordinator that comes in, all new management. You saw how bad the locker room was last year and all of the holes that needed to be filled. You can't do it all in one season. So you knew it was going to be an incremental thing. No regrets on the number 2 pick with Saquon. There were some positive changes made, but then, as you know, they missed on some free agents as well. And it was a great draft for the first time in 5 or 6 years for the Giants, where they've actually had a great draft,
right,
top to bottom. And you miss on some free agents. You got a guy like Curtis Riley playing, on the back end. with Landon and not really providing the help that was needed out there. You miscalculate on the offensive line with Amama and with Flowers, and it took a good 8 games to recover from that stuff. It's tough to come back from 1-7. They made it somewhat respectable there by being in games, winning some games, and then being in some of the games that they lost in the back half of the season. But it's, by any standards, it was not a success. It was another calamity. But I genuinely feel with some of the pieces that are in place as they continue to kind of rebuild this roster, they're moving in the right direction.
So I'm going to have you play GM. How would you improve this team?
Again, I would continue to address the big bodies up front. I don't think, and I think there is not a person out there that wouldn't agree with me on this, that you address the defensive line. You've got some good big bodies there right now through the draft last year. Now I think you got to continue. Hernandez was a great addition. You got to continue to bolster up front. You got to work on that right side of the line, and I would re-sign Brown. I'd figure out what to do with the right tackle. Chad Wheeler can be your swing tackle, but he's not your starting right tackle right now. I don't think based on what he did this past season. You got to bolster that right tackle position. I know they like Pio at center, and Pulley I know had a nice season as well when he came in and filled in for him. So you're in a better position than you were last year, but I think it still needs to be addressed. And then again, like I said, you gotta find a safety out there. You still have to work on the corner. I mean, this defense. I mean, nothing short of terrible.
Sure.
So you need a pass rush. You need cornerbacks. There's still so many holes that need to be filled. Again, I wouldn't have expected all of those things to be remedied coming into this season. But I think, like most, I did not expect after 8 games to be 1-7.
Do you think that they're going to pull the quarterback pick with the first round draft pick at 6?
I still think it's too early to tell. I mean, I think you got to get through the combine / private workouts to really see. I mean, I know everybody's falling in love with Haskins right now, and the fact that he's a New Jersey guy and he loves the Giants and he wants to be a Giant. Everybody's kind of in love with that right now. But I still think a lot will still play itself out before that decision is made. And it'll be interesting to see, what route they do take with Eli. I mean, they still have him on the roster. I think, there's probably going to have to be some restructuring done there. And I think, I'm sure, Eli's a smart guy. He's been through 2, big contracts with the Giants. I'm sure he knows that, hey, we need additional bodies as well. And who knows? I mean, I'm not speaking for him, obviously, and it's always easy to speak when you're talking about someone else's money. But I'm sure he knows that they need a lot of bodies as well, and he'll do what he has to do to stay in this jersey on this team, and also help some of the pieces around him to make everybody better.
Yeah, he has 20 million reasons not to retire, basically.
Yeah. I mean, nobody leaves that stuff on the table, and not to mention, he can still play, and and he knows it. And I think, you've got guys that are already. I mean, he knows he's not going to the Pro Bowl this year, so it's not like he needs to be out there throwing every day. But I know for a fact he's still working. He's working out. I mean, some people would say, "Come on, you just had a birthday for a guy. You're 38 years old. Take a break." But that's not him. That's not him.
All right, I've been going back and forth in my own head over who our biggest rivalry is. I've kind of narrowed it down to Dallas and Philly, and I'm leaning towards one way. I want to hear what your take on our biggest rivalry.
It's Philly. I firmly believe it's Philly. Growing up, it was more Dallas, but I just think that the genuine hatred and disdain for Philadelphia overrides the hatred and disdain for Dallas, at least in my personal opinion. So it hurts me more losing to Philadelphia than it does to Dallas.
Yeah, I would agree so.
Trust me, they both sting, but I'd rank Philadelphia, losing to them up a little higher, just because going there for Giant games and you just see the way they treat the fans and Giant. It's awful. It's a disaster down there.
Chris, I want to thank you so much for the interview. I definitely wanted to keep it short, and not, you've probably been up since 2:00 in the morning trying to get ready for
You're exactly right. So I hope this made sense. If it didn't, I apologize. Hey, thanks again. This is Chris Wragge from CBS2. You can follow me at Chris Wragge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Chris Wragge, ChrisWragge.
All right, Chris. Thanks a lot.
You got it,
Awesome.
man. Say thanks again. All right, continue the good work.
You.
I mean it.